Gloria Brown is receiving a phone call that will lead to her winning a life-changing $1 million prize. But getting there was a road riddled with scandals, conspiracies, and they all lead back to one man. In 1987, McDonald's wanted to run a promotion for adults. They ended up hiring a company named Simon Marketing to create a game, and what they came up with was a Monopoly game where to enter, you just had to make everyday purchases at McDonald's. And the prizes were actually pretty good. First, you just have to go to McDonald's, buy food or drink, and your carton, or the box that it comes in, is actually going to contain a McDonald's property. I wonder at what point I'm just going to give up and just take those takes and be like, yeah, good enough. Like, we're moving on. We're moving on. If you have 2 to 4 of the same color game piece or property, or if you end up getting an instant win property, then you'll actually win a prize. Simon Marketing is the marketing branch of Diddler Brothers, and they already had a relationship with McDonald's. They were actually the ones that came up with the idea of the Happy Meal back in the 80s. You see, McDonald's doesn't do their own marketing. They outsource it. And this game wasn't going to be any different. Simon Marketing was in charge of printing the tickets, creating tamper-proof seals, and distributing these tickets across the nation. One day out of the blue, her old friend Robin gave her a call and said that she had an opportunity she might be interested in. They met at Robin's house, and she was told how she could win a $1 million prize. Even the idea that she would receive the $1 million seemed a little sketchy. That's a hard thing to pass up. Before this, she was making $24,000 a year. Add on that she was a single parent, and this is just too hard to pass up. She had been lucky in the past, and she actually won a home in a giveaway at a bank. By the time Robin contacted her, she owned 2 different properties, and that's one reason why she was able to join. Robin and her husband, Jerry Colombo, who we're just going to call Colombo, had a man on the inside, and they were actually helping to distribute these tickets illegally. He was giving them away to friends and family, but Robin knew that they've got to be smarter than this or else they're going to get caught. So that's one reason why Gloria was picked. They wanted to have more diversity among the people that were getting these tickets. While at the Colombos, Jerry Colombo ended up asking Gloria, how much money do you have to put down? See, the way that this scam worked is you first had to put down a down payment to get a ticket, and then after you received the winnings, then you'd pay out half to the group. Gloria didn't have that kind of money sitting around, so she ended up mortgaging her house to get the down payment. One of the stipulations for actually winning the prize is that you can be used in different promotions. So Gloria was in different commercials, she was on posters, but all this time she was still working her normal job. The winnings were just not enough to live a comfortable lifestyle, especially after giving Colombo half. Unfortunately, this was the least of her worries. The FBI received an anonymous tip saying that the McDonald's Monopoly game was rigged because all of the winners are related. After getting this tip, and we'll talk about who the informant was later, they were able to actually start their investigation. They took a look at the connection between the winners, and they discovered that they were related, and something really is going on here. They didn't know who was involved or how they were actually getting these tickets, but they decided to reach out to McDonald's head of security just to see if they knew what was actually going on. A select handful of people from corporate were invited to the FBI headquarters in Jacksonville, Florida. There, they laid out what they had found just because they wanted to see if they knew anything. Turns out they had no idea, so they ended up working with the FBI to create a plan to catch them. The only way was to run the game one more time. The management team was a little hesitant on this. If they run this game knowing that it's rigged, it could hurt McDonald's public image, but also the image of the game itself. Ultimately, they decided, we've got to catch these people, so they ran it one last time. They ran the game as normal, and after the winning ticket showed up, the FBI pretended to shoot a promotional video for the winner, Michael Hoover. The goal was to have a video of his account so that they could use it as evidence later, so they went undercover. Michael walked them through how he found the ticket, and the plan was a success. They also placed a wiretap on his phone, and after the media left, he gave a call to Andrew Glom. Michael bragged about how the media ate up the story, and while the FBI was listening, one name kept coming up: Uncle Jerry. They traced common numbers for the past winners of the last 12 years, and one contact was the same. Uncle Jerry, real name Jerome Jacobson, was born in 1943. He had always wanted to be a police officer. Due to injuries and other medical conditions, this made things difficult, but in 1976, he was sworn into the Hollywood police force in Florida. Unfortunately for him, he ended up suffering an accident on the job and was ultimately terminated from the force. After some years, he was able to get a foothold in private security with Diller Brothers and eventually oversaw the $500 million contract with McDonald's. Jerome was committed to security and theft prevention, and he oversaw the ticket handling process. To make sure that employees didn't steal, he went as far as to checking employees' shoes or even having truck drivers watched when they went to the restroom. And eventually, in 1988, Simon Marketing hired him directly. He was in charge of making sure the pieces were distributed, and he would fly all across the country to put these tickets onto fry containers or drink cups. And even when he was traveling, an accountant, Hilda Bennett, was traveling with him to make sure that the pieces made it. This made things a little difficult when he decided to go to the dark side. The tickets were stored in a briefcase that needed two combinations, one from Jerome and the other from Hilda. Inside, the tickets were covered by tamper-proof seals. Being entrusted with these game pieces that had the power to change lives became too much for him, and he ended up telling his stepbrother Marvin that he could give him a winning game piece. Marvin didn't think anything of it, but Jerome formed a plan. The best time to steal tickets would be whenever he's traveling from location to location. And since the person that's accompanying him is female, he could actually have some alone time with the briefcase in the bathroom. That sounds like sexual harassment right there. I don't know. I don't like that one at all. We're changing that. The best time to steal the tickets would be whenever he's traveling from location to location. And since the person that's accompanying him is female, he should be able to get away with doing that in the bathroom. He was known for paying attention to people's passwords, so getting Hilda's wasn't going to be too big of an issue. But he was going to have to figure out how to get around that tamper-proof seal. One day, a batch of those tamper-proof seals were sent accidentally to his office. Now he had everything that he needed to make the swap. Not long after, he gave his stepbrother a piece that's worth $25,000, and they split the money. It wasn't long until people started to hear that he was in charge of the Monopoly game pieces, and this is whenever his scheme really started to become profitable. The way he made his money was like this. First, swap the winning piece with the common. Second, have somebody pay a deposit for this piece. And then third, teach him how to deposit it. Then you just have to rinse and repeat. He normally charged $45,000 for a $1 million piece, but towards the end, he was actually selling them for $100,000. Jerome knew what he was doing was wrong, but he kind of justified it to himself, saying that the game was already rigged. So the pieces were being distributed in the US, but not in Canada like advertised. He decided, hey, I might as well get a cut of the money. The business was starting to take shape, but he still needed a better distribution network. And this all changed when he met Jerry Colombo in the airport. The thing about Colombo is he was plugged into the underground crime scene. He operated adult nightclubs, underground casinos, sports betting rings, and he even claimed to be a member of New York's infamous Colombo crime family. A while after paying the down payment for the winning piece, Gloria ended up getting a call from Colombo saying that the piece is ready. Colombo gave her the winning ticket and coached her on how to cash it in. Since there were too many winners in Jacksonville, Florida, they had to go to South Carolina to actually claim the prize. She was nervous at this point, but what were her options? She could back out now and lose all of her money, or she could continue and just see what happens. She walked into the McDonald's restaurant and told the manager that she had the winning ticket. They then took the ticket into the back, and Gloria waited. And waited. The manager was probably just talking to corporate to verify that the ticket was real, but it took so long that Colombo and the cousin that actually drove up there with him started to get nervous. After she returned, part 1 was done. Now they needed to do some paperwork to make it look like she really did live in South Carolina and not Jacksonville, Florida. They set up a P.O. box and used Gloria's cousin's address that did live in South Carolina. Jerry and Robin Colombo and their son were driving on the highway when an argument actually caused Jerry to get out of the car on the highway, where it was then struck by a car. After the accident, everyone was rushed to the hospital. It seemed like everything was fine except for some minor injuries, but later that week, Jerry Colombo passed away. He had internal bleeding from the accident, but they didn't catch it in time. This was a tough loss for their family, especially since their son was just about to turn 2. This caused major issues for the scandal as well. See, McDonald's didn't actually give the winners all of the money at one time. A $1 million winner would receive $50,000 a year over 20 years. There were several people that actually lost access to their checks, since Colombo was the only one that had access. So not only do they not get the money, but they're still being taxed on the money. This also disrupted the distribution chain. They needed to find a replacement, which they actually found in AJ. Andrew A.J. Blom was an old drug dealer, and he was able to use his connections to distribute the tickets. The FBI already had the latest winner's testimony on tape, but now they needed to get the previous winner's recollection as well. They decided to lure them in with the idea of a winner's reunion. They called and were able to get several of them together and record their stories as evidence. At this point, the investigation is almost over. The last thing that they need is just to catch Uncle Jerry in the act. Uncle Jerry was a very cautious person, and he would only meet in very discreet locations. One day, the FBI actually intercepted a call between him and Dwight Baker and figured out where they were going to be making the exchange. They found them on the side of the highway and were able to secretly videotape them exchanging money. With everything that they needed, it was time to make arrests. The winners were scattered all across the country, and they needed the help of other FBI districts to actually make these arrests. And before they could do that, they needed to share the information they had on the investigation. They prepared a 20 to 30 page document outlining their evidence, all the details, and even when they wanted to make these arrests. Everyone needed to be taken in at the same time, so that way they wouldn't be able to coordinate their stories or even run. They were sending out the information, but instead of sending it to the Greenville FBI office, they sent it to the Greenville news station. They were too close to wrapping up this investigation for something like this to ruin months of hard work. So an agent and the actual prosecutor flew down and talked to the news station. They luckily agreed in exchange for being able to publish this story first. The people that participated in this conspiracy were all charged with mail fraud. So cheating in a game really isn't something the US government can persecute you for, but since they were using the mail system to mail tickets around and fraudulently changing their addresses, that is something that they can prosecute you for. Anyone that won a prize had to pay restitution, but some were actually charged with house arrest, where others had to spend 12 to 18 months in prison. Uncle Jerry only spent 37 months in prison and had to pay $12.2 million out of the estimated $24 million in restitution and forfeiture. This story didn't have a good ending for anyone. They all had to pay the money back. A lot of them lost their reputations, and most of them were worse off after the fact than where they were before. A lot of the winners were brought in by friends, so most of those relationships are ruined. The company Simon Marketing lost their contract with McDonald's, which was 98% of their revenue, and soon after they lost their contract with Kraft. In 2009, Simon Marketing and Diddler Brothers were liquidated. This is such a tough thing. We know this is wrong, but if someone offers you a chance to win $1 million, are you really going to pass it up? Alright, so why does no one remember this? This game was huge, so you'd think that everybody would know this. But it's all about the timing. When I was doing research on this, I found articles from all of the major publishing companies around that time, but the trial started September 10th, and the very next day was September 11th. So yeah, there was a collective shift in focus. I couldn't fit everything that I wanted to in the main section, so think of this as an extended director's cut. So who was the informant? It was actually Jerry Colombo's mother. So with that accident where he passed, Robin was the one driving, and she was so mad that she wanted custody of their children and needed to get rid of her and her parents. Can you really play the game without buying anything? So this was actually what I originally wanted to talk about, but yeah. So apparently, if you want to enter any kind of sweepstakes or giveaway, companies have to provide a free option, or else it's considered gambling. Normally, all you have to do is send a letter to a P.O. box and you're entered. If you want to know more, here's a video from an actual attorney that does a really good job of explaining it. So Uncle Jerry actually had this special vest that he used to transport the tickets, and it turns out all of that was just for show. He was just trying to throw people off of his trail. Thanks for watching. I really enjoyed making this video, and if you stuck with me this far, do all the YouTube things, like and subscribe. All of the music was performed and created by me, or at least most of it. We'll see how I feel whenever I'm editing this. So if you like the music, let me know. If you want to hear more about this story, HBO did a really good 6-part documentary on it, and I would highly recommend checking that out. It was a really good source for me while I was actually doing my research, since they do have primary sources. So I was able to clarify a lot of the things that I had questions with just from reading articles. So I would definitely recommend you go checking that out. That's everything, and I'll see you next time.